everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk. Of course, victory for Norwich City at the weekend, a 4-1 run out against Watford. Difficult place to go on Saturday, though, heading to Derby County, who are unbeaten at home so far this season. With that, delighted to be joined by Ash to get the insight on the Rams. Ash, first and foremost, thanks for coming on the show this evening. Really do appreciate your time. Let's just go back a little bit to the last few seasons. I mean, relegation from the Championship a couple of years ago, a really tough first season in League One, missing out on the playoffs. But last season, automatic promotion, a really good run in that division. What was the kind of mood, the feeling around Pride Park?
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, I think everyone's aware of the trials and tribulations of the club over the last sort of 3 or 4 years and everything that comes with administration and, being probably 24 hours away from not being a club anymore. So I think last season, the overriding emotion was just pure relief. I think to get over the line and to do it automatically was huge. Because I think if we'd have gone through the playoffs again, I think we might have struggled. Our squad was sort of getting tired, getting weary. Our squad was, over the age of, average age was over 30 last season. But that's the problem when you're just picking up players on free transfers. Unfortunately, you're just relying on players that maybe weren't fancied by the club or it wasn't working out for them elsewhere. So yeah, I think last season it was just purely relief just to get back to where we think we belong back in the Championship.
Yeah, back in the Championship now. Feels like you've settled into life. Okay, I'm just going to bring up your sort of results so far this season. I mean, disappointment on the opening day at Blackburn, but disappointment at Watford. A very marginal game at Sheffield United at the weekend, a free kick doing that. But obviously the home form there, all 3 wins, very convincing win there against Bristol City, narrow wins over Cardiff and Middlesbrough. I mean, what have you sort of made of your start to the season? That from afar looks relatively positive.
Yeah, I mean, it's 50%, isn't it? Sort of 3 wins, 3 defeats. I think as far as we're concerned, I think, if you're looking at it from the outside looking in, if you win all your home games and you lose all your away games, that's, we're safe. And I think that's all we're aiming for this season. So, I mean, the result against Bristol City was a shock. I think to beat them 3-0 was quite impressive. And I don't think many would have had us down to beat them 3-0. But yeah, I mean, importantly for us, we're not conceding many goals. I know we obviously shipped 4 in the opening day against Blackburn, but I think we were still getting used to each other. I think we've had, we've obviously made some new signings and the system was slightly different to what we've been used to playing. So I think other than that, the first game, I think we've settled down and I think we're, sort of quietly, very quietly confident that, over the next sort of 40 games or so, we might just be okay to stay up.
Yeah, so the home form there is evident to see. Not lost at home, I don't think, since last February against Charlton. So clearly the home form is a key factor. I mean, what's the atmosphere like at Pride Park these days? Are the fans sort of buying into what they're seeing on the pitch?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there'll always be people that aren't happy with, maybe the manager's style of play and, the personnel that he picks on a match day. But I think that wouldn't be football otherwise, would it? If everyone agreed on everything all the time, it'd be pretty boring and wouldn't be able to have these debates. So yeah, I mean, we're still getting 28,000 regularly for home games, which is, for League One and then, sort of bottom end of the Championship as we are now. That's, it's an incredible number, really. And I think it is fairly positive. And as long as we're seeing that the players are giving everything that they've got, whether, we're not got the most talented squad in the world, we've not got the biggest squad in the world, but I think, as long as we're trying, I think the fans will buy into it all day, every day. So yeah, happy.
Yeah, where's the bar for this season? Is survival just purely the key? Do you think you can sort of push on a little bit higher?
I think it has to be. I think minimum has to be safety. I think we would be naive to think that we would finish maybe mid-table. It would be, amazing. It'd be great. It'd be great for us to finish mid-table. But I think realistically, it has to be survival because there are going to be teams that are, way above what we can achieve. But I also think there are probably teams that are, a bit worse off than us. So I think if we play our game, I think we'll be okay. But yeah, I think it's got to be safety.
Yeah, what's sort of the opinion on Paul Warne? Of course, been in the dugout for a couple of years now. Had a pretty long stint at Rotherham before. Got a couple of promotions on his CV out of League One, which is obviously clearly something that I suppose admirable for the Derby sort of board at the time, bringing him in. Now back in the Championship, what do you sort of make to him and his playing style?
I think if you ask me and you ask other people, I think they give you very different answers. For me, as long as it's effective, it doesn't really matter too much. I was lucky enough to go out to a training session one day last season at the back end of the season, and saw a real insight of what he was trying to do. And he gave off the impression that he was really frustrated that he couldn't play the way he wanted to play because of the personnel that he got. And I think he was effectively working with one arm tied behind his back. Could only bring in free transfers, loan players from Premier League clubs, and that sort of thing. So I think he was really, really having to adapt to what he'd inherited and what else he could do in the summer. So it's very much sort of this: let's defend, let's keep it to 0, and let's see what we can get on the break. And to be honest, it's worked out quite well for us. I mean, you've probably seen the goal against Middlesbrough was, a defensive corner that turned into a goal just because we sort of stepped up and went with it. And that's typically what we try and do: try and get the ball out wide to the wingers, and try and see if we can get some balls in the box for our strikers. But I think, to be honest, he likes to play 5 at the back. He likes to play 3 centre halves and wing backs. But I think he's had to adapt to a 4 at the moment, purely because of injuries and who we've been able to bring in the building. We didn't bring in Nathaniel Phillips until transfer deadline day, so I think he was a centre half short to be able to play 3 at the back, especially in the Championship. So as long as he gets the job done, for me, I'm not gonna slag the bloke off.
Feels like set pieces are maybe quite a key part of this Derby team. I was sort of looking at the statistics from last season. I think you were the sort of top of the League One in terms of goals from set pieces. This season, a couple already from corners. I mean, is that kind of one of the key strengths of this Derby team?
Yeah, massively. I mean, Curtis Nelson, opening game of the season, our first goal back in the Championship was a header from a corner. So I think that told you everything you needed to know about, where we think we're going to get our goals from, because I think we're going to struggle to carve teams open. That's just not necessarily the way that we play. And especially with the way that we've been suffering with injuries recently, we haven't got too much creativity. So I think from set pieces, I definitely think we come into our own, especially if we're playing 3 at the back. Get 3 big centre halves up there from corners and free kicks, and I think that'll be a major strength for us this season.
You got to pinpoint any weaknesses in this squad? Is there somewhere that Norwich could capitalise potentially on Saturday afternoon?
Good question. I think if you've got pacey players, I think some of our squad is a bit older and maybe not necessarily the quickest. I mean, even if you're looking at the maybe sort of below 30 players, I mean, we've got the likes of Aaron Cashin and, Ebu Adams, and I think Ben Osborne's just turned 30, which is great, but they're not the quickest. So I think if you've got some fast players that can maybe play it through it quickly, I think that might be where we come a bit unstuck.
Yeah, you mentioned a little bit there about experienced players. I mean, just going back to sort of the window that's just shut and the players you brought in, obviously some of those have plenty of Championship experience. I mean, a few of them from sort of over the border from us, from Ipswich Town, of course, Marcus Harness, Caden Jackson, a few from overseas as well. I mean, who's maybe stood out so far from that pack of players you brought in?
I think it's going to have to be two, I think. And I think it's the 2 that we've bought from overseas. I mean, it's something that we're not really used to, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. But I think for the last sort of 10 years or so, historically, Derby have never bought well from abroad. It's never been something we've been particularly good at. And if we have identified players, they always turn out to not be the best, unfortunately. So I think Zetterstrom, the keeper, we'll call him sort of the rebirth of Petr Cech, if you like, with his scrum cap. He's a big guy, 6'6", made some really, really good saves recently. Was unfortunate with a goal on Saturday. I think Heyman could put that ball in one place, and he managed to do that. That's the quality of the league, unfortunately. But other than that, he was outstanding, and unfortunately, on another day we could have come out with a 0-0 draw. And Kenzo Hoodmin, hopefully I'm saying his name right. Is the type of player that we've been, shouting out for years. Someone that could just bring that extra touch, that extra bit of quality. Can see maybe 2 or 3 passes in front of him before the game, gets on top of him. I mean, he struggled the first game against Blackburn, but I think he came out and said, look, it's going to take me a game or 2 to get used to this. This is, physicality wise, it's a big step up from what he was used to maybe in the Dutch league or the lower leagues of the Dutch leagues. But he's been phenomenal. Chipped in with a couple of goals already. I think his all-round ability really gets people off their seats.
Yeah, before we talk about the game on Saturday, who's maybe the star man more generally in this team? Is it any of those players you just mentioned? Or I know Cashin's very highly rated as a young centre-back. You know, Mendes Lang, of course, has been around the Championship League One before, Premier League as well. So is there any sort of individual you'd sort of pinpoint as the one to look out for?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. I mean, if you asked me last season who I thought it would have been going into this season, I thought it would have been Mendes Lang. I thought he would have maybe, carried on his good form for us the last couple of years. Has been outstanding and is now our captain again this season. But I think Kenzo Hoodman has really stepped up, and I think just being able to excite the fans and get the fans off their seats, I think is key. And being able to play between the lines, play that number 10 role, chip in with a goal, chip in with an assist, I think it will just prove invaluable for us this season. I think he's really standing out so far.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued to get your sort of thoughts on the Championship as a whole. I mean, how are you sort of viewing it? Does it feel stronger maybe than times before? Sort of, do you feel there's opportunity for different teams maybe to push on this season and try and get promotion? You know, it feels like maybe certainly from last season for us, it feels like maybe a little bit weaker. But obviously, you're jumping into it for the first time in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because I think when you're in League One, you sort of becomes all-consuming. You sort of forget about everything else, and you sort of forget what the Championship's like. But we were in the Championship for so long. I mean, we got relegated in 2008 from the Premier League, and we're in it, every season until we unfortunately got relegated. So, I mean, I think now the likes of Southampton went up last season. I think it does feel a little bit weaker, and I know it's probably difficult for me to say coming up from League One to really get a feel for it again. But I think some of the teams you might have thought would have a good start to the season maybe haven't, and those that have had a good start, Oxford are a bit like ourselves, sitting mid-table after 6 games. You maybe would have thought that we'd both be struggling, but we're not at the moment. And if all goes to plan, I think we might be okay. So I think it does feel a little bit weaker, but it's a long old season, so I don't want to jinx us. It won't be my fault otherwise. So.
Yeah, just intrigued to get your thoughts as well on sort of Norwich coming to Pride Park on Saturday. Have you seen much of Norwich so far this season? What sort of test are you maybe expecting from the Canaries?
Haven't seen too much, but I've looked at the table, I've looked at the results, and we're quite similar. I mean, I know you guys have drew a couple of games. I think have you 2 of each, isn't it? 1-2 drew 2. Yeah. So still mixed bag, a bit like us. But historically, we've always done pretty well at Carrow Road, and you guys have always done pretty well at Pride Park. So I think it's going to be a tough game. I think without jinxing ourselves, I think we're due to concede at some point. I think to go as many games as we've gone at home without conceding, it's almost too good for true, and it's going to have to come to an end at some point. And I think if you're really on it, I think you probably be able to scrape a goal or 2 against us. So it's really on us to take the game to you a little bit and hopefully go for it, and hopefully they'll come out with the 3 points. But if not, I think we might be there for the taking for us. If we're not on it, I think you guys might be able to step up and beat us.
Yeah, you said they're hoping Derby to take 3 points. Obviously, want to push you for a score prediction. I mean, looking back historically, I think Norwich did win on their last visit to Pride Park in 2021, but Derby sort of had the upper hand, I suppose, over the last 10. I think Norwich just 2 wins in the last 10 games between these two sides. There's been some pretty high goal scoring affairs. I sort of remember the 4-3 that you guys got at Carrow Road a few years back, and there's been some memorable games. So, yeah, how do you see this one going on Saturday?
In all honesty, I'm going to sit on the fence and be really boring and think it'll be a 1-1 draw. That's not me, thinking, we might do this and we might do that. I honestly think that there's a goal in it for each of us. Like I said, I think we're due to concede at some point. But I think we'll also nick one. I think with the crowd behind us, I also think there's a goal in it for us. So I think for me, it's just set up for a 1-1 draw. But I think a point for us at home is a good point, especially in our position and where we are now. I think the first 10 games, if we keep it tight and we can try and keep our own form going, it'll be really good for us. So yeah, I'm going to go with 1-1 to sit on the fence.
Yeah, I think I could see a similar outcome, a pretty tight game. Norwich not necessarily the best on the road. Derby very good at home. So, yeah, it all feels like it's set up for a really good game. Ash, do really appreciate your time this evening and sharing all those thoughts. And sort of the inside camp there on Derby. Lots of good content coming across our channels, of course. Between now and the end of the week, we'll be speaking to Yanisov Torup, full updates on the press conference, in terms of who's going to be available for this one. Hopefully Slimani potentially could be back, which will be a huge boost going to Derby. Of course, we've got the app as well, which you can take out a subscription to. All the other social media is all going to be linked down below. So check those out. Of course, we'll see you at Pride Park on Saturday lunchtime, 12:30 kickoff. Looking forward to going back to Pride Park, been a few years. So let's hope we get a good game. And of course, both sides will be hoping for 3 points.